Good morning. I already used that bit.
You did.
I already used that bit. It would have been very fitting because today is Memorial Day. And I had selected, at the time, 7 movies, war movies, in fact, for us to discuss. But here's the thing about war movies. They're kind of long. Have you noticed that? They're like
Like
3, 4 hours long.
four of them were like 3 hours.
Yeah, like if you watch the whole list, you have an easier time, first off, watching, I think, the extended cut of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings in a shorter amount of time than watching the movies I selected. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I had the extended cut of Apocalypse Now on that list, which, by the way, I look like Captain Kilgore from that movie.
Yeah,
And we'll talk Apocalypse Now because we both already saw it, so it's not a movie. I'd love to rewatch it, the
yeah.
extended cut, but we saw the original theatrical version, which was not Coppola's uh, original version that he had wanted. So I think that movie's been remade like 2, 3 different times. You got the Redux edition, it came out in like 2001. You had, in the 90s, you had the final cut released, the extended cut, director's cut, whatever you want to call it. Uh, but we already seen it, so we didn't really feel the need to rewatch it again as of now. But we did watch 2 movies, neither of which have anything to do with the American Memorial Day, but it does have to do with soldiers dying.
World War II.
World War II, it's a good war. Some people may even say it's the best.
It
This,
wasn't the
this,
Great War.
no, it's
It
not.
was not the Great War.
That's some shit Trump would say.
It
It was the best. Some people may even say it was great. There was World War II. And World War II is the greatest. Everyone knows that's what they say. It's the greatest.
I don't know if that was
I've,
really.
I've never done that impression in my life.
That was pretty good for a first time attempt.
I was just channeling something. Uh, so we're not talking about Trump, but some people might compare this other guy to him. I don't. That's neither here nor there. There's a guy named Adolf Hitler. You may have heard of him. There's a little known war called World War II. It's the second of its kind. I'm waiting for the trilogy to be completed. Waiting for the final cut. So you watched of the list. You watched what? 2 of them? Those on the list.
Downfall and Come and See.
Come and see. It's a biblical verse. Come and see. And I beheld. Shit. How's the Bible go? What does the Bible say? Something about a pale rider and hell followed with him. Some revelation thing.
Nothing too serious.
Nothing too crazy. Yeah. So come and see. I will get to, but I think in order we're going to talk about Apocalypse Now because we've already seen it, so we can get that out of the way. Talk about our feelings on it. Then Downfall, and then Come and See. Now the reason I selected the ones I did because I did have Gods and Generals on, and I had more diversity, more variety of different conflicts and wars. Uh, Funnily enough, not a single American one popped up on there. All these are foreign. Except the hell, you could even say Apocalypse Now is foreign because it was filmed in the Philippines. So in a certain way, you could. But that's the only American English speaking movie we have of the 3. So before we even get into that, let's actually talk about Memorial Day. What did these people die for? They fought so we can be free and sit here today to talk about the movies based off the wars they died in. So let's talk about Memorial Day.
It's always been really close to my birthday. It's almost always the Monday after my birthday. It's May 27th.
You had a kick-ass birthday.
Yeah, dinosaurs, beer, and seafood, man.
Why is that just the winning formula? That's the winning formula right there, man. You got red, white, and blue, and beer, dinosaurs, and crawdaddies.
You had crawdaddies.
Damn straight I did, and they were delicious. I'll tell you. There was the juicy crab, not the fancy crab, not the kooky crab, not the killer crab. It was the juicy crab. Juicy, my God, was
It was good food, man. And that was a good bit. We hadn't even went into the restaurant before we were saying that.
it? We just got out of the car at the parking lot.
Yeah.
Making SpongeBob references. You can't go a single day without making a SpongeBob reference. Everyone knows.
It's illegal.
It feels like it. It feels like a sin. a crime to commit if you don't make a SpongeBob reference. But you know, we went through the juicy crab that day with Slug here and his girlfriend Willow. And we sat down, and you know the food is good when half the table talk is well, not talk at all. You're sitting there eating the food. Like the minutes would pass by, not a person would say a damn word. You know what? I'll tell you why. Because we were shoving our gullet with some great Cajun seasoning. You asked specifically for the extra, extra hot. Not extra hot, extra, extra hot.
Because it's already called extra hot.
Damn straight. Damn straight.
Extra, extra hot and extra Cajun.
It really wasn't that hot. I think we're getting desensitized. Like with our movies.
Yeah,
Till you give me Carolina Reaper, and then I think you got me beat. But until then,
I did do the Carolina Reaper challenge at Buffalo Wild Wings twice.
twice. It beat my ass
The
twice.
second time I forgot my wallet, so I had to beat the
Well,
challenge.
the first time, James was ragging on me about this. He thought I was being silly and being goofy because I showed up with my grandpa's Vietnam hat because I was going to war, and I had a gun holster on with a like a was it lemon juice?
Yeah.
It was a lemon juice container I had shoved into the gun holster. And the reason I did this is because I saw Hot Ones with Gordon Ramsay, and according to him, the lemon juice alleviates some of this spiciness. So I didn't know I was not allowed to use it while during the competition. So I just look like a jackass, which is oftentimes is the case. But he didn't see it. I was trying to have fun.
Hmm.
That's what I was trying to do was have fun. Did I have fun? Yes. Did I get my ass beat? Yes. Did I look like an idiot doing it?
You're 0-2. I'm 2-0.
Ah, it was a good day. So, to round it back out to Memorial Day, which was also pretty damn good. Uh, we didn't really do much today except watch out the movies we had to. But leading up to it, not just did we have your birthday, you get fucking hammered. And I had at the U joint, I had Irish whiskey. It was called the Irish Mule. I know what the Moscow Mule was, but I've never had an Irish Mule. And they came in these tankards, man, like an Elder Scrolls tankard, like straight out of the tavern. That shit was good. It had a margarita straw for some reason. Who puts a margarita straw in whiskey? That's a good question.
Pansies.
Bunch of pansies. Not panzers. We're about to talk about panzers because there's a shit ton of them in these movies. We went to see Ballyhoo
That was a fun show.
for different reasons.
You know,
I like the Harbor Boys.
Harbor Boys
Shout
did
out,
War Pigs.
dude. When the saxophone guy, what do you call a saxophone guy? What's the
Saxon.
a,
Saxes.
can I just call him a Saxon? That sounds cooler.
That sounds cooler, yeah.
Yeah. So the Saxon, uh, while he's still got the saxophone wrapped around his neck, pulls out a fucking police siren, like the megaphone, and he starts blaring. And the second because by the way, guys, we should say this first. If you're unfamiliar with Ballyhoo or the Harbor Boys, as you probably are with the Harbor Boys, considering they're newer, 2018 is when they were formed. They're a beach rock band, and so when we heard the police siren go off, me and Slug looked at each other, and it was this immediate, oh my god, no way.
No way, bro.
No way, bro. No way this is actually happening at a beach rock concert in Atlanta at the Vinyl.
Yeah,
The Vinyl.
that's where I saw destruction.
Speaking of destruction, did you see the parking garage underneath the Vinyl?
Oh my god, it's so
Structural
old.
damage. It looks like it was bombed during World War II. The damn
I
place,
don't
I
want to be
swear.
part of that timeline. Something must have gone really wrong for the Germans to make it over here.
That's a whole other timeline. That's Man in the High Castle type shit. Or Wolfenstein.
Yeah,
So we did that. Ballyhoo was great, of course they were. The Harbor's Boys merch was, I think, better than Ballyhoo's.
yeah, some of them.
Ballyhoo, though,
They did. Harbor Boys did have a condom.
exactly. How do you beat that? You might give me a little white. Wait, hold on. We went out for a sec. Hold on, guys.
Debauchery.
It's the send in. So back to what we were saying. Ballyhoo was phenomenal. Great show. What did we do after the show? Do you remember?
We went to Taco Mac.
course we did. Everything goes back to Taco Max, the end all be all of all creation. Had some great food. I'm gonna be real with you. The last week has been kind of a haze. We've been up to so much
Alcohol,
shit, dude.
yeah, alcohol will do that to a man.
Alcohol, among other things, will do something to a man, and so it's all been a blur. But it's all really been about this podcast.
Can we cut
No,
it
no.
there?
We play the ball where it lies. We play the ball where it lies. That's my philosophy. So, your birthday was great. Don't get me wrong. Memorial Day, nothing but respect. But it's all been about these three movies. It's what it's all been leaning to for the last, honestly, since the day I was born. This is it.
I'm
This,
sorry, I played too much Skyrim. I mean, that's also what I did today, but it's not as bad because I was waiting for you to call me, and you didn't call me, and I did like three different like actual missions instead of the
wow.
miscellaneous missions.
Wow, you did something that wasn't a side quest?
Yeah, but no, I mean technically yes, but it's like it was one of the more important missions that kind of come above the miscellaneous
Did
ones.
you even get the wipe run yet?
No, that
Still not.
the
Okay.
the goal is to go as long as I can without going to white run. But I did find out I can't finish the Civil War without going to white run at least once before we sack them,
So
to say the least.
so you know what happens.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you know how things go.
What I'm kind of hoping on is when we sack the city to the far west with the dwarven cave. What I'm kind of hoping is to fix that bug. I just uh, I just sack the city, and then the new guy makes me thane.
That's what it's all about. It's just a power play.
Yeah.
Are you are you playing Ulfric Stormcloak as a means to an end, just so you can become the leader of Skyrim and make it more progressive? Is that it?
Yes. That's exactly what it is.
All so you
Like,
can get some orc poo tank.
look, man,
Nothing but
I
respect.
got a high elf at my first property. I have what are they called? A Barson? They're like farther north
Oh, the
Nords,
Britons.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Bretons.
The
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Breton,
Yeah.
a Breton at the cannibal chick, uh, Aya or Oya, I forget how to
I
pronounce
can't
her name.
pronounce that
The
Nordic shit.
cannibal chick you meet at the Hall of the Dead at the far west stronghold or hold, and uh, and then at my third property that's right above Morthal. I believe this was called right before like Solitude's right here and Moroth is right here, so the property is kind of like in between there. I have an orc there.
You have an orc. Does she know?
She don't know about me yet.
But you know all about her.
Yes, sir.
She doesn't have access to the Wikipedia. You
Yeah,
know everything about her.
yeah. My plan is to just complete the Civil War as Stormcloak, be a war veteran, be a Thane and everywhere, own property everywhere, and then I'm gonna go get the orc Strongheart,
I thought it was Ironheart.
Iron.
I know your lady better than you.
Sometimes because it's kind of hard, like to keep focused on one goal is to get the orc, but then you got to realize there you got to get the necklace, and then you also got to get the particular gauntlet for them to be nice to you. And I still haven't. I've only gotten the necklace. I haven't got the gauntlet. It's the first time I've done it out of order.
See, I love that though. Is you choosing, despite everything, to be a Stormcloak, despite how inherently racist native Nords are in Skyrim. And you still being like, yeah, I believe that Skyrim should be free of Imperial rule. The orcs, though.
Well,
The orcs.
my role playing aspect is that I'm there to change people's minds, literally. Because like one day I'll show up with a high elf, and they're like, "What the fuck?" Another day I'll show up with an orc, or I'll show up with another a Khajiit. Just like I work with everybody, they see this guy who helps everybody, all the Nords, but he doesn't care if you're not a Nord. He cares that you are a citizen of Skyrim.
That's so good.
You know.
That's so good.
And like even with like I have to side with uh um the Olivo Wilhelm because he's the one leading to free the Nords, and maybe we don't see eye to eye, but we have the same want is to free Skyrim from Imperial control.
That's the ultimate goal of the Stormcloak Rebellion. That's why I also agree with it. Now, yeah, there's a lot of like internal politics.
That aren't too pretty.
No, but like the end goal is the same.
Yeah,
And
free
so,
Skyrim.
and it's something that anyone of any background can get behind. And the game doesn't do any favors. Because say your only introduction to the Elder Scrolls franchise is through Skyrim, it doesn't get off on the right footing. There, you cross a border and they're already trying to cut your head off. So, if this is your first time playing, why the hell would you side with the Imperials?
Right.
But if you had been following the series since Arena, Daggerfall, Battlespire, there's that Redguard game that no one talks about. There's Morrowind, Oblivion. Then you get to Skyrim, and then ESO, and then maybe there'll be another entry. Who knows?
We won't.
We'll get
We're gonna get Portal 3 before we get GTA
we'll get
6.
we'll get Half-Life 4
Yeah.
before we get another Elder Scrolls game, even though it's been announced. They announced it way too early. But
Way
if
too early.
but if you follow the games, especially if you played Oblivion, because Oblivion, you're in Cyrodiil, you're in the heart of the Empire, you're literally in the capital city. You're saved by Uriel Septim, the Emperor
Hmm.
himself. So it makes sense that if you follow from Oblivion, that you might be an Imperial sympathizer. It makes sense because that's your perspective. Your perspective is from the side of the Empire. So when you start Skyrim from the Nordic POV, and if that's your introduction, you're definitely going to see these guys as the bad guys.
They're invaders of my country. I
Exactly.
see it as I also see it as like Britain invading Scotland, trying to take over in the Civil War with the Scottish, and I see the Scottish as Stormcloaks, and I also see it as the Nords would never win if the Dragonborn doesn't side with the Stormcloaks.
You have no choice to
Yeah,
give these guys any ounce of hope.
yeah.
You're the chosen one. So it makes you wonder though, since you're the chosen one, destined to save the world from a time-eating dragon. Answer me this: why doesn't the Imperial just side with you?
It's
They know
about principle. It's
about
about
principle,
yeah,
so they care more about the Empire than they do about the preservation of the world.
yeah. I think so.
Also, the banning, the making illegal of the worship of Talos is despicable. Sickens me. First off, the Empire was founded by Talos,
Right.
and you're gonna say you can't worship the guy. There's people. There's probably a George Washington cult out there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. I think you should be allowed to worship whoever you want. Free Skyrim.
Free Skyrim. Honestly, yeah.
Hashtag free love, free Skyrim. Right there.
Yeah, considering free love. I play as a Nord, and I'm just a simp for an orc chick. like, like, imagine I'm like at a town meeting, like a Skyrim meeting of all the Yalls and the High King, and I roll up with my orc wife, as everybody has traditional Nordic wives. But I'm literally the guy. Like they would have lost without me. So they're like, this guy. This guy. If he was at the actual leader of the Stormcloaks, he would be High King, no question about
I want to raise a finger and go, but I can't say anything because it's true. And it's so crazy how the internal politics of Skyrim translates so well to the topic of today.
it.
Isn't that
Yes.
crazy?
Yeah.
You know who you remind me of? I told you about this guy before. I think it was on Vice News or something, but it was this older black gentleman who would not infiltrate. He was invited to KKK meetings and would attend rallies and such. It would befriend the Ku Klux Klan members there. And they would bring him along just to show him their ways, right?
Hmm.
But they're not trying to befriend this guy. They're probably more than likely trying to intimidate him, trying to scare him off. But he would always stay, and because of that, people's minds were changed. Maybe he's not so bad. Befriend people you otherwise would disagree with or not like, because you could be losing out on a really good friend.
I it's a good metaphor, but I wouldn't compare the Stormcloaks to the Ku Klux Klan if we're trying to get people to like the Stormcloaks.
Well, think of actually, the more I think about it, the more apt that description really is. Because, am I a Southern white guy? Yes. But I'll say this. A lot of people who join groups like that are more nationalistic. They're very prideful of their heritage, where they come from, and they might see it essentially as this represents the South. And they may not even come at it with any racial prejudice. They may not come at it with any negativity whatsoever. They may simply look at it as I need to belong somewhere.
So, one point that I look at it is, and it works better because I'm a Nord, but when there are particular NPCs that are Nords that even don't like other races being born in Skyrim, considering them not true citizens of Skyrim, I'm just like, they're born here. That if they're born here and Skyrim's people are considered Nords, then if you're born here regardless, you're a Nord. Kind of like, yeah, you might be have English descent or Indian descent, but if you're born in Georgia, you're a Georgia Peach.
Mm.
It doesn't matter who you are, you're here.
Isn't that weird that you're the most nationalistic guy when you play Skyrim? You really care about the country. And if you're born in the country, you're an American. I mean, a Nord. Simple as that.
And I feel like if you're born in Skyrim, you're just a Nord. Nord isn't a term for a race. It's more of a title of citizenship. Like, yeah, I would say like if Kashyyyk was born where Red Guards come from, or even Dark Elves, they would be considered that Red Guards or High Elves, Dark Elves, even if they're not
Right.
elves.
And you'd be terribly out of place if you are of Nordic descent, born in Argonia
Yeah,
or the Black Marsh.
to say the same thing.
Right. And I think it stands in even starker contrast in a place like that where there's not even humans,
Right.
which inherently leads us to the Jewish people living in Germany. People who were born there, people who, by all rights, belong there. Generations, ancestors go back generation after generation after generation of people who have lived there. And all of a sudden, people come along and say, no, a matter of fact, you don't belong here, even though their family has probably lived there longer than the people persecuting them.
Right.
Funnily enough, not so funny. Let's talk about Downfall.
Downfall is a really good movie, and with given the topic, I honestly think it's a low blow to call it Nazis sympathizing esque movie propaganda.
Propaganda.
No,
People on forums will say that, but they'll be wrong.
I disagree, and it's like no, I could be the furthest from Nazism, you know. So there's no like sympathy from that perspective. It's more of you feel bad for the people that weren't in charge.
Right.
You feel bad for the German people, not like the SSR or the SS soldiers or even Hitler. You feel bad like because it's from the perspective of the what is the secretary?
Yeah.
Yeah, the secretary at least could be, excuse me, could be farther from the carnage. All she does is just type up his speeches or whatever. You know, or type up letters, or you will see if you see it obituary or not obituaries, wills.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
That scene is kind of humorous.
yeah,
We'll get to it.
yeah.
But yeah, the fact that all she knows is that this is the leader of my country who has led us out of a depression. Everyone loves him and adores him, and that kind of rubs off on you. That fanaticism, that admiration for the person who made your country better than what it used to be. And so when she is in a lineup at the very beginning of the movie with a bunch of other people, I think it's funny that Hitler, by the way, just wonderfully acted.
Yes.
It's just that's Hitler.
Yeah.
Anytime I think of the movie version of Hitler, that's the guy. But when he walks into the room and he's just a guy,
Hmm.
he is just a guy that people have put all this trust and faith and love in. This one guy, and he walks into the room, and there's nothing magical about him. There's like a fatherly aura he's radiating. He's just
Hmm.
like a nice old man, and he comes into the room, and he eyes her immediately out of this lineup of other chicks, and they've all come here to pretty much train or show off their typing skills to be like a stenographer kind of in a way to type up his speeches. And he does this lineup and he hears their name, where they're from, and he just goes down the list, goes down the lineup. But the whole time he's looking at her, and he finds out she's from Munich. And he's like, "Oh, Munich girl, that's sweet, that's nice." And she's the last in the lineup, and she's the first to go in the room.
Hmm.
And it's a sweet scene, and I think it's really smart to begin the movie with just a nice scene. Hitler's got a dog. He's loving on his dog.
Hmm.
He's telling her it's okay 'cause she messes up on the typewriter, and he's like, "We'll do it again." And it's a sweet scene, and immediately contrasted with the next scene.
I think it's not quite humanizing because I don't think Hitler is this screaming evil man 24/7.
No,
Because considering he used to be an art student, or at least tried to be, you
it
know,
was damn good.
yeah. Um, I just don't think that every waking hour he's this tyrant dictator who's nothing but pure evil. I'm sure, like when if he's trying out an accountant, or even in this case a
Secretary.
secretary, then there would be no need to be this wrathful tyrant. There's no point in intimidating. You want this person to work for you, you know?
Right, and that's his magic. Directing all that wrath toward other people, but knowing how to appease the right people.
Right.
Get those people on your side, the German people on your side. But no, this movie, the beauty in it, before we go further into the plot, and the plot is just history. So if you know history, there it's
If
kind of mute
you
or
played
moot,
World at War.
which is that game doesn't give a fuck. That game is hardcore. That's history.
Hmm.
And the movies we're talking about
Make
are
Call of
hardcore.
Duty great again.
Honestly, though, yeah, I'm a big fan of Ghost. I have a Ghost poster right there. I think that's when it peaked, but I'm in the minority here.
I don't know. I like it. Infinite Warfare.
It's all right. I just like my boots on the ground. And then they made the most basic, generic ass World War II game, and they'd even have swastikas in it. They would even call them Nazis. Now, granted, no, not every German soldier's a Nazi. Nazism is the party itself,
Right.
and then you have the German army. Those things are different. They're separated.
Or is every Nazi an SS, or is every SS a Nazi?
Every SS is a Nazi, but it does not work the other way around. Good observation. But with this movie, if you know history and the downfall of Berlin, which I mean that's where the name comes from, the downfall of everyone in that city, but also the downfall of the Nazi Empire, the Third Reich, at the
Bull,
time.
the Bolsheviks come to town. Boys are back in town.
In two movies we're going to talk about, your boys show up to save the day. And the craziest thing is
They're not good
they're
people.
not they're a bunch of a ravenous gang of thieves, man. Personally, I think we should take it back to Leninism. Stalinism kind of gave communism a bad rap. Let's be
Dude,
real.
anybody any leader that said that they were communists were not good people. Let's be real for a second.
Like, do you think Karl Marx would could not like if he saw the future? Do you think he would scrap his work and burn it if he saw what people did with it?
That's a tough one.
Like, if you have hindsight like that, if you're able, well, it's not really hindsight if you're looking forward, but say H.G. Wells showed up with his time machine and took Karl Marx to the future, and he saw the death of Tsar Nicholas and the Romanov family, and then sprinted forward, and he saw Stalin and the genocide he was waging on his own people. You might even say that Stalin's worse in some respects to Hitler. Not like it's a macho man
It's
game
not
of
a competition.
it's not about numbers. It's really not. But they're both really bad.
Hmm.
They're pretty bad. So it's funny when you get to these kind of movies, and at the end of them, the boys are back in town. The boys in brown, and they show up, and they just wreck shit up. But you're rooting for them
You kind of have to.
because you're thinking, well, Nazi equals bad. I don't like these people. I want to see them die, horrific deaths. And then they show up and they do just that, and you're rooting for them. Like hell yeah! But you're not seeing it from their perspective. They're just as bad. And the amount of, and I'm going to use the word, there is a lot of rape, there is a lot of murder, there is just bad things happen in war. I don't know if you're aware, but bad things happen in war, and both sides are very much accountable for it. A lot of pillaging on all sides.
Japanese weren't any better either.
Rape of Nanking for
Yeah.
to the Chinese, or even Unit 731 and all the experimentation. It's like everyone
I didn't
sucks.
finish the video, but I did a lot about it before watching it again.
I recommend Men Behind the Sun. That is a phenomenal movie that shows the horrors of Unit 731. But it's like all these sides suck.
Hmm.
And when it comes to World War II, more than any other war, it's so easy to make a movie black and white, especially if it's from the side of the Allies or the Western powers, as they're called. If you see Americans or British soldiers or Australians or Kiwis, you get excited because you're thinking those are my boys. Those are good people. Those are the good guys fighting for the side of freedom. And it's so easy to look at the Axis powers, and be like, those are so 100% the bad guys because they are. They even look like villains. They wear fucking skulls and black uniforms, like BDSM super soldiers, like straight up, like they look evil.
Yeah, I think that one portrait of the Japanese emperor, who was the dictator during the time, is one of the most like intimidating, most like holy shit, that's a bad man.
That guy's up to no good. Yeah, so it's when it comes to wars like World War II, it's so easy to look at the American side of things, the Western side of things. Those are the good guys. They're here to save the day. And I'm telling you, I didn't put Saving Private Ryan on the list because I feel like I want to talk about movies that other people may not be talking about as much because everyone knows that. It's got Tom Hanks, it's Steven Spielberg. It's a classic. It's a masterpiece. We don't have to talk about it. Everyone
Everybody
knows.
knows.
Everyone
Like
knows.
the lecture you gave me about giving this going in a deep synopsis for the first two Hellraiser movies. So everybody knows.
It's
What are you doing?
yeah, it's like we don't really have to. Um, but when it comes to movies like that, I almost shed a tear every time because those are heroes. I see them as these are scared kids running up on that beach to liberate the world. They're saving the world, and it's very emotional when I think about it like that. But there's perspectives we oftentimes neglect when discussing war films, and that's civilians, or it's the Nazi perspective, both from the highest echelon, from to Hitler to Goering to Goebbels, to all those guys. And then you start going down the ladder, down the rung, and then you got volunteer groups sent out into the streets that don't even have guns. Just bare knuckle boxing the Soviets in the streets. Imagine the balls, huh? You got anti tank brigades made up of children. You got civilians. A dad missing an arm who I don't know if it's in the script anywhere, but I interpreted that as he's a veteran of the last war and has been there to see Germany rise and fall multiple times. It has seen what all this has led to. And now he's seen his son fighting for this stupid war that he has seen from the very beginning as a fruitless endeavor. And
Germany just doesn't win.
you can't lose harder than they did.
Like that's like it's one of those things. Like if we talk about, excuse me, wars, and when you first brought up the topic, I made this mention after watching a bit of Downfall before we watched it together, was that like with like the 7 Years War between France and England, it's just points. There's no real evil, you know.
Lines on the chart.
Yeah. I mean, we can debate about how things led with the colonization of Africa, and because of how who had points, who had more pull, but if you want to describe it that way. But with World War II, these are people that like we can't let win. Like if you look at England and France, it's like who the fuck cares? They're both like superpowers. They're just trying to destroy each other, you know. Whatever. It's just points on a board. But these people are committing genocides on people. They are invading their native or their neighbors. They're literally trying to conquer the world and bring this evil ideology with them to everywhere they go. They're like this isn't just a point on the board. We have to eliminate everything that they're doing to the point where it ended up where they split the country in half and they were owned by two different parties, you know?
Treating it like a contagion.
Yeah.
Like it was, this goes to communism too, which is essentially why it was split to begin with, because the people who were spearheading communism at that time, because let's be real, there's no political ideology that's inherently evil on its own basis or its own merit. It's the people in charge who abuse it as tools for their own gain.
Yeah, because Nazism is just a form of um,
National socialism,
nationalism.
national socialism,
Yeah,
which is where Nazi actually comes from. It's just national socialism,
you know,
and that's just words. But what you decide to do with that and how it affects other people, that's a different story. You can believe whatever you want,
yeah,
apply any label you want to yourself, but the second you try to strip others of their rights and their dignity and their own life in pursuit of that ideology, then it becomes corrupt and evil. But inherently, the idea itself is not. And so, communism at that time, the domino effect is very real. I mean, like
you're not wrong.
I'm not. It's just true. You saw it. It happened. McCarthy be damned. I mean, you saw it. I don't support McCarthy. He wanted the nuke the Chinese, and that would have been bad. That's
Let's
all.
get that out.
Let's clear the room.
Full disclosure.
I don't support McCarthy, but no, no. Uh, yeah. So you look at history and you see evil being committed by these powers,
Mhm.
and I mean, hell, I mean, you look at, and we'll talk more about it in a minute, but with Apocalypse Now, the book Heart of Darkness is actually based off colonization of the Congo. So, and I mean, that is about superpowers invading smaller countries and killing off its people and taking its resources. But there's almost this sense of we're far removed from that. These are very primitive people living in some other part of the world we don't care about. And what's interesting is when we start talking about more civilized countries, all of a sudden we give a shit. Russia invades Ukraine. That's a bunch of white people. That's a bunch of Europeans. It's a civilized country. We care about that.
We care about the wheat.
I mean, the wheat is very important. Just like
let's,
we cared about the
let's,
oil in Kuwait.
let's not beat around the bush. It's the
Speak,
wheat we care about.
well, right, but speaking of Bush, so the Iraq War and Afghanistan, it's we only cared because we gained something from it, right? And that's what all war is self-preservation of both your resources, your people, and an idea. With America, we have these ideals of grandeur, of freedom for all. And how true that is depends on who you ask. Because immediately after freeing all the slaves, what do we do but go and do a genocide on Indians? So, on indigenous people, right after the Emancipation Proclamation, to free one people and then go slaughter another. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy how the idea only applies when it's useful to you? And that goes for communism at the time. It's just a tool that people can gather behind, and so when you really look at it, they're just not the good guys. They're just not. And they almost had a blitzkrieg type of mentality with war, which is essentially just throw a bunch of people at a firing line, and eventually you're going to overwhelm the enemy with numbers. You'll win through sheer force because even then, they're still very primitive. Did they seize the means of production from the Romanovs? Hell yeah, they did. But they're still far behind the world technologically, and so all they had was just manpower and throw it at the enemy.
Peter the Great was the one that introduced the industrialization of Russia, correct?
Peter the Great was the homie.
Like, for real? Like, of
Okay, personally, I'm more of a Catherine the Great kind of guy.
course.
I mean, she's a bad bitch,
I
though.
like,
She's
like,
just a bad bitch.
like, like appearance, yes, and then also shit that she got up to, yeah,
It's just fascinating.
yeah.
Like, she was a good ruler. Damn, man, she was a bad bitch.
She didn't take shit from nobody.
Yeah, I think Hitler's historical crush was like Nefertiti. He was really into her, a pharaoh, one of the few female pharaohs of Egypt. I'm a big fan of Catherine the Great. If I had a historical crush, be her. Damn straight. Uh,
I never thought about it like that. A historical crush.
you don't have any?
No, really, no.
You're never like, damn, if I have a time machine, I'd hit that. You gonna think about it? Right here on the podcast, you can confirm it for
I
us?
don't know. I don't know if it says anything about me and my politics, but Joan of Arc is the first one that comes to mind.
I knew it. I knew that's what you were gonna say. I knew you were gonna say Joan of Arc. I don't know. That cut doesn't do it for me. That ain't it, G.
I didn't
That
know it
ain't
was
it.
illegal. I, I thought she was getting burned for witchcraft, but apparently they thought it was witchcraft because she wore men's clothing. Fuck me, I guess.
She probably would. She was here today, but she's not because people suck. People burnt down things they don't understand.
Oh, Cleopatra, the Greek.
That's too the Greek.
Yeah.
Don't tell Netflix that. Again, that's such an easy opinion to have. Who's
Yeah.
the hottest chick in history? Cleopatra.
Mm.
Easy win. Easy win. Easy W. You know what's not an easy W?
Germany's conquest of Europe.
Amen.
Both times. Both times.
Well, see, again, why people don't talk about World War I as much, it's not as clear cut. Is one side like good versus evil? There is no good versus evil. Well, everyone sucks. All these powers vying for supremacy. They want to try out their new brand spanking new toys that they've been developing for decades. They have all these chemical weapons and machine guns. Hell yeah, we need something to use it on. And it could be big game hunting. Well, Goering, maybe. Goering was all about some big game hunting, but wasn't he wasn't there yet.
The most dangerous game.
It's a good book. Excuse me, novella. Was it a short story?
I think it was a short story.
Semantics.
Either ways, they need to read it.
It's good, fine literature.
Yeah.
Unlike
Patrick Bateman.
unlike Mein Kampf. Wait, Patrick Bateman? Are you saying Patrick Bateman and Herman Goering are very similar?
Most dangerous game.
Oh yeah.
He's got to always follow that high. Am I wrong?
I mean, quite literally, if you want to attribute this to the Nazis and make the parallel there, they quite literally were high. Meth.
Like literally, like you can watch the Olympic footage. Man's tweaking. Hitler's literally tweaking on camera.
Is that the first like footage of someone tweaking on drugs?
I
Is
don't
this
know.
a thing?
I don't know.
Do we
Man.
know
We
for a
gotta
fact?
go. We gotta go to Ask Reddit.
All right. I mean, that's where you go when you don't know. That's that's where you go. I was on Ask Reddit the other day, and someone didn't know what panty liners were. They didn't know the difference between that and a pad. And so it was like an 800 comment Ask Reddit. 99% of it being like, what are you stupid? What are you dumb? Why would you go online and ask this? Just Google it, you stupid bitch. Dude, that's what Google's for. Don't go full of yourself publicly. Like Hitler tweaking out on television for probably the first time ever in history at the Olympics. Gotta love it.
It was so fucking funny. They were giving all their German athletes steroids, and then
Still lost
and still lost.
to an American black guy.
Yeah,
Imagine it.
imagine that.
Go figure.
For Jamaica was competing.
Well, if your whole ideology hinges on you being genetically superior, eugenics and all that, and an African American from America blows you out of the water.
Even after doing performance enhancement drugs.
Or maybe you're just a loser. I mean, think about it. The Nazis, they had club feet. Most of them were even Aryan. They didn't have blonde hair, blue eyes. One of them flunked art school and made it everyone else's problem.
Yeah,
You just couldn't draw people. That's the problem. Like,
it's hard.
drawing people, so I can't draw fingers.
That's why you draw furries.
I don't draw furries. I draw characters that did not align to any species or gender because I don't see those things.
Sure, kid.
Why not? Nazis. So with Downfall, I think the most important thing to talk about it is just how unbiased it is because I've seen it. People have come at it thinking it's Nazi sympathy, it's propaganda because it's simply from their perspective. It's not. It's just history. And it's ugly and it's brutal and it's nasty and it's gnarly. That you don't have to like it. That's not what the movie's about. And that's what's so great about war movies is it's very unpleasant. And so for us to be running a horror podcast, talk about war movies, someone might say, why are you talking about war movies during a horror podcast? I think they're one and the same.
The horrors of war.
Horrors of war. And especially with Downfall, it's so defeated. Because by the time the movie starts, they should have already surrendered. Any sane, rational country that hasn't been indoctrinated with this religious zeal about their Fuhrer, they almost all would have surrendered by now. Because most people care about their family, they care about their homes, they care more about their own safety and preservation of their community than they care of this on this big national stage.
Italy and Japan had already surrendered, right?
No.
Not yet?
Well, Italy had fallen before because their own people rose up and killed Mussolini and hung him on a gas station.
Right.
Beat the shit out of that guy. He looked like a banana after it was peeled and smushed. That's what Mussolini looked like. But that was before, and that was a big deal when that happened because Hitler's like, we're free game. That can happen.
Right.
People can rise up and take you out because Hitler was a big. Mussolini came first on the stage. And Hitler, first off, Hitler didn't even found the Nazi Party. He joined it and just moved up the ranks. For whatever reason, I guess he was charismatic. I don't know. Have you seen those Boy Scout pictures he took with those knickerbockers he was wearing and those high socks on his legs? It's disgusting.
You look like a nerd.
He's a dork. Hitler is a fucking dork.
Yeah.
If he was born today, he'd be a weeb.
Honestly, I could see him with a body pillow.
I can too. Of like the perfect Aryan waifu
Yeah.
on his body pillow. Hitler's a dork. Hitler's a weeb. Hitler should go kill himself. Spoiler alert. He did. We'll get there.
He didn't find him, though.
No, because he went to Argentina.
He went to Hollow Earth.
Well, where do you think the portal to Hollow Earth is in Argentina? That's what they don't want you to know.
Okay.
What do you think the Falklands War was about?
The Hollow Earth.
The Hollow Earth. Tell me I'm wrong. Have you been to the Falkland Islands? Falk, no, you haven't. So shut up. What are we talking about?
Downfall.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Get excited. I said Hollow Earth.
One day.
So don't get me excited. So with the vibe of the movie, they're already defeated, and you get to just see it, ground level, what it was like to be there in that moment, and that's one of my favorite things with historical films. Period. Is don't be biased about it. Don't choose a side. Don't try to shed light on one side or the other. And Gods and Generals does that. It's mostly historically accurate, but they're trying to shed a more positive light on the side that gets very underrepresented in media a lot because we just think of them as bad guys. But it's interesting to look, well, how did they feel about themselves? What did they think about what they were doing because they thought they were good guys?
Right.
Everyone thinks they're the good guys, and
I'm a villain.
you're a pretty tame villain.
Hey,
In
there's a lot
comparison,
of those.
to the ones we're talking about,
Yeah.
I think you're doing okay. But well, everyone's a villain in someone else's story. But imagine being the villain of everyone's story. Yeah, and even Hitler pointed out, he's like, come morning, I'll be hated by millions. As if he wasn't already.
Right.
But to see everyone's perspective from Spear, from Monkey, from all these different Nazi officials, and then just the regular civilians, to see at ground level what it's like to just be there. It's why I love Titanic, minus the love story, because it honestly adds nothing. That's why I'm more of a fan of the Nazi Titanic film. You can watch it on YouTube, even though it's littered with Nazi propaganda. It's I mean, it's made by Goebbels,
Right.
the minister of propaganda. That's more of just a fun little, side thing if you want to watch it. But I like the '50s Titanic. I like other versions of the Titanic, not the one where they find the Titanic and then they bring it back to the surface. That was weird. That was a weird movie. Uh, and then they actually found it like not too long after that movie came out. But I like movies that just focus on the event. What was it like to be there? It's why, as much as I love Christopher Nolan and I like Dunkirk, it's not an accurate representation of what being at Dunkirk was actually like. You got all these people standing single file for miles down a beach. I'm like, no, these are people trying to escape. They're completely surrounded. All the pamphlets say, "We have you surrounded. Lay down your arms. You're done for." In layman's terms, I don't speak German.
Right.
So you have all these people surrounded, and you're telling me they're just gonna line single file line like it's second grade?
Harry Styles wasn't there.
Unwatchable.
He's
It's nigh unwatchable.
actually pretty good in the movie.
He was.
Yeah.
Wasn't also your boy from Peaky
Oh
Blinders.
yeah, Cillian Murphy.
Cillian Murphy was in it. Damn good too. He was also wasn't there, so unwatchable. But you know who was in World War II? Hitler. Movie gets points. So Downfall, I think the best moments of the movie are the ones where because most of the movie is isolated. It's like a bottle episode of a TV show. Most of it's underground, it's in the bunker, and I think that's
One
what
location.
it's a one location movie. And I think that's
How
where it
else would you
shines.
shoot it?
I th- I think that's where it shines though.
Hmm.
And I love the idea of being trapped somewhere with all this kerfuffle happening around you. There's all this stuff happening, and you don't see it. You know it's happening, and you're hearing reports. You're seeing glimpses of the chaos happening just outside of reach, outside of eyesight. But it's not personally affecting them yet. It's just the psychological torment they're undergoing, knowing we're not going to win.
Kind of like the concept for the Godzilla movie we came up with, or you came up with earlier.
Well, you can't. Well, I was watching something about Ben drowned on YouTube while eating a bowl of noodles. Man, that red chili powder really does wonders on a bowl of noodles. And you came in there talking about NES Godzilla, and no, I mentioned it.
Yeah, you were like, "What's?" You were originally like, "What's better, Ben Drowned or Petscop?" And I was like, "Ben Drowned." And then you were like, "What's better, NES Godzilla or Ben Drowned?" And I was like, "NES Godzilla." I mean, like that's the best video game creepypasta literally ever written.
I want to give you some credit for this one. I still don't know what you did, but I'm sure you influenced me somehow. Oh yeah, we came up with an idea of. I was inspired by Downfall to make a Godzilla. What if Godzilla was rampaging across these empty, desolate cities with no people in it? And everyone's like, well, Godzilla didn't destroy these cities. What did? And you'd have all these journalists and all these reporters located in an underground bunker reporting on stuff that the audience is not privy to and not seeing. But you're hearing the aftermath. You're hearing on the ground reports, but you don't see it. And I think that's what's so cool about Downfall. Not cool because it happened.
Hmm.
What's cool in hindsight because those people suck. But with the POV that we have with the movie, it is humanizing. And that's what's so cool about doing it from a Nazi perspective is you stop caring about the sigils they're wearing and the pendants and the uniform of the person, and you're identifying with individuals. It's greater than the flags they're waving. It's greater than the uniforms they wear, the Hail Hitlers, the Mein Führer, all the little catchphrases, all the little gimmicks just wash away, and you start seeing the individual actions of people, the things that they're doing. Then you got the doctor.
I think he's my favorite character.
Doctor.
If I had to pick a favorite character in Downfall,
They're all Nazis or German soldiers.
yeah,
I mean, not all of them, but yeah. And isn't that's the craziest thing? Because I think after the movie, I'm like, who was your favorite character? It was asking that question. I'm like, some people might be angry with just that statement alone.
yeah. I really appreciated how the Doctor cared about the citizens more than the actual soldiers.
More than leadership itself, who blamed the people for what they were currently experiencing.
Like, why did you guys trust us? Look what happened.
That's what it came across. Like, why would you put faith in me?
Yeah,
What are you, stupid?
but then in the same breath, Hitler's like, how can I trust you people? I conquered Europe without going to the academy, and with him so oblivious and so high on his own, like I am God. I am the best. I am the Fuhrer. You
Are
know?
you the Fuhrer?
No, he's he's so far up his own ass. He doesn't realize he conquered Europe because of his soldiers.
His soldiers and his generals.
Yeah, and he's blaming them. It's just like, who the fuck are you? I conquered Europe and you can't listen to me?
Right, and there's a split down the middle, even in the room. All the acting is just it's
Perfect.
on top. Not for a second was I like I'm watching the movie. I mean, from Hitler to the secretary, to everybody, everyone was just perfect.
It
But
just felt like we were just watching history.
which is perfect.
Yeah.
It's just so perfect for a historical movie to feel like history. How about that? Uh, but when they're in the room together, in a cramped, sweaty room, just shoulder to shoulder, all these different officers and generals, uh, they're sitting in there, and you can look on their faces how each individual feels about what Hitler is saying. Because some
Yeah.
people are like, "How dare you?" One of them rose up and was like, "How dare you insult the soldiers? How dare you insult the citizens, the people who trusted you?" And Hitler starts yelling over him, telling him pretty much to shut up. But then you have other people be like, "Watch your mouth! You're talking to the Fuhrer." See, are you more loyal to this guy, or are you more loyal to the country and the people?
Right.
And people's colors show most in chaos. This is why I love chaos so much. Is when you throw a bunch of people in this scenario, their true colors shine. Their true character reveals itself in these moments. Like what the Joker was saying in The Dark Knight. He's like, if you put a gun to somebody's head, and you act like you're gonna pull the trigger, you know, like, okay, I can't do a Heath Ledger impression, but what would that guy do? If you put a guy to one guy's head and say, rat this person out, they might do it. Another person might take the bullet instead of that person. And it's like in these moments where death is imminent, where your ass is on the line, everyone ass is on the line. What will you do with that? Some people like so I don't remember his name, but Ava Braun's sister, her husband, I don't know if they were married yet, it may have been a fiance, but they're together. He left and joined this pretty much debaucherous party. There was one giant drunken orgy that was going on in one of the I think the chancellery or the one of the parliament buildings. It doesn't matter. The government's collapsed. It's not. It's just a building now. It's just concrete.
Right.
They're all in there. Women got their tops off. They're drinking. They're making a mockery of their own party, and he's up there just getting himself some, and he's considered a deserter because he was conspiring with Heinrich Himmler, by the way, the guy who orchestrated the Holocaust, because Hitler didn't pin any official documents. That was all Himmler. Um, Himmler got out of Dodge, but he was conspiring with this guy to surrender to the Allies. And this is what we're going back earlier: is the Soviets were so bad, raping and pillaging and murdering across the countryside. A lot of soldiers, Nazis, Germans, what do you want to call them, would have preferred to have surrendered to the Western powers than surrender to their counterparts to the East. That's how scared they were. They'd rather surrender to us. And it's so sad because on the flip of that, this doesn't have anything to do with downfall, but I saw this clip one time, heartbreaking, of it was right after Japan surrendered and both bombs had fallen and the government was just in complete disarray on the fringe of surrendering. They may have already surrendered, but they had told their people that when the Americans show up, they're gonna rape you and they're gonna kill you. And so there's this black and white footage, very eerie, of all these mothers lining up on a hill, like on a tall cliffside above the ocean, with their babies and their toddlers, and chunking them into the ocean as the American soldiers arrive, and they're just like, holy shit, and you can see it on the American faces. Like they're crying, they're freaking out, they're telling them to please stop. We're not going to hurt you. Like your government surrendered. We're not at war anymore. We're an occupying force, but we're here to restore order and bring peace to your land. And you're chucking your children into the ocean, and
Ugh.
it's crazy to watch because you have one side that's been told something that they believe so wholeheartedly that the American forces, when they arrive, are going to kill and rape you. That's what they were told, and so they acted on this information and murdered their children. And then you look at what happened with uh, what's his name, Goebbels. Goebbels and his wife murdered their children. They
Mhm.
drugged them because the thought of the Soviets getting there was so bad that their children might be raped and murdered and mutilated was bad enough for them to poison them.
And the oldest was the only one that knew.
Right. Because they knew something was up. And throughout the movie, there's these moments marked by tonal shifts. There's almost this psychosis going on near the beginning of the movie where everyone's still delusional about victory. Like they're moving, Hitler's moving troops around on a map that don't exist, and the people he wants to come and save him have like 1,300 troops and are almost completely out of ammunition. There's no savior. They're done. The jig is up. The quote Goebbels, the game is over. It's dunzo,
Hmm.
to put it frank.
He killed his dog, man. That sucked,
That
man.
got you?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, what was the dog's name? You love the dog so much? What's the dog's name?
I can't pronounce German words.
Can't pronounce Blondie?
I don't remember that.
I think he says it like once. Again,
Yeah.
it's one of those historical things. If you know the name of the dog, that's one thing. And the movie does repeat names for the audience, but for the most part, it's just showing you a sequence of events and the people and the players in it from point A to point B to point C. And if by the end of it, it just has this aura of just pointlessness, not just hopelessness, because yeah, they start killing themselves off and they start there's all this infighting and there's these groups going out and hanging deserters and elderly people because they can't fight. Eventually they just destroy themselves,
Hmm.
whether through suicide or just killing their own countrymen. This hate spreads throughout all the ranks and this hopelessness befalls them. But at the very end, when all is said and done, and the secretary and this little boy who was in the anti-tank division escape the city, they get on a bicycle and it's almost like none of it ever happened. It's like none of it was real. It was just a bad dream, and they just woke up from it.
It's definitely a powerful ending.
Because even when the city does fall and Hitler's dead, the bunkers, the Fuhrer bunkers fallen, you still have a few leftover officers who are still struggling with this. And like most of the army's already surrendered, but you got like a handful of guys still putting up a resistance. To the last man, they're willing to fight, and there's nothing left to fight for. It's gone. And there's so even the guy I like, Monkey, he's still holding on with this last group, just fighting for whatever reason. And then they find out everyone else has surrendered. Then two of them shoot themselves, and then they finally surrender. And it's so bleak and hopeless. But then you look at it from the perspective of the secretary and the child, and when they leave, they just they just leave,
Yeah.
and it's like it wasn't real. And it shows you, I think, the reason that ending is so powerful is it shows you how pointless the final fight, that final last stand, that struggle to preserve National Socialism and the ideas that Hitler had propagated, in the end, destroyed the country. It was just not worth dying for. And then they just leave and they go down the countryside, and there's just a brighter tomorrow. And I think as an anti-war film, that works excellent. Any final notes you want to add on to that?
Evil has been destroyed, diminished.
That sounds like something Tolkien would say.
Yeah.
Because evil's never truly gone, but it is diminished. But the problem I have with the hopefulness of this ending, here's the problem I have with Downfall, right? This again, the Soviets aren't these rescuers. They're not saviors. They're just as bad, and the country gets split in half. And we know that there's these political ramifications with the Berlin Wall and all that entails. Thank God for Gorbachev, right? Tearing down that wall. But until then, you have all this strife and the tearing apart of families and all this separation. And it's like, it's not great. But for a brief moment, a brief moment, it all just seems non-existent. And I think that's the beauty of the ending, as well as a historical fault, is because we know what comes after isn't a happy ending.
No,
It's just the beginning of something else. But for a brief moment, it just doesn't matter.
it just doesn't matter.
Just doesn't matter. And that's what a good war movie should do, is remind you that it's pointless. Which is hard for a guy who loves violence. But even then, I have to recognize that, yeah, this was just stupid. But if there was any war in history that was really worth fighting for, like really, that really mattered, okay, someone might say the American Civil War, and they'd be fair. They'd be right. But World War II
Yeah,
is the
or
war.
Revolutionary War is pretty important too.
Even then, I still don't think there were good guys and bad guys. I think objectively, yeah, I think it was good for us to win the war because I live in this country. So yeah, but I can understand from a British point of view why they'd want to hold on to the colonies.
Right.
We think about that. We revolted against an empire because they taxed our fucking tea.
That sounds American to me.
It's damn American. But it's like of all the reasons. I mean, there's a multitude of reasons. But
Yeah.
like even, I mean, damn, even with the Boston quote unquote massacre, which sounds really bad. It was a protest against the British in which people threw rocks and like were beaming British soldiers. They were being attacked. They felt like their lives were threatened. And so the British soldiers fired back because they felt endangered.
Right.
And then John Adams literally presided over the court hearing defending the Redcoats. No one talks about that. The first vice president and the second U.S. president, same guy, John Adams, fought for the Redcoats during the Boston Massacre because even he knew these guys were valid in what they were doing.
It's called
So,
self-defense.
so it's is that not American? Is they stood their ground? They stood their ground.
Is Boston a stand your ground state?
That's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Sure, England is my city. That's the same energy. England is my city. Yeah, Boston was a stand your ground state in the year 1775. That's when it happened, not 76. Don't correct me. Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now.
Easy one to talk about.
Not really. It's a rough movie, man.
It's a
Like at
tough
least
watch.
with Downfall, you know the ending. You know these people are bad for majority of these characters. Yes, all these characters are bad, and they're getting their comeuppance. But it's not a hard watch like Apocalypse Now is, because it feels like a fever dream.
I mean, it is. It's first off, Francis Coppola was struggling heavily with depression at the time, and I believe he wanted Robert Redford to begin with to play the role of Willard. It was another big name Hollywood actor who turned down the role when he saw the working conditions, and that's when they got Martin Sheen, which by the way is just a replica. I swear to God, him and Charlie Sheen they're not father and son. I swear, Charlie Sheen is a clone of Martin Sheen. That's conspiracy corner for today. They look damn near identical to each other, but everyone's on drugs. They're in the Philippines, and during this time in the Philippines, there's a war going on with insurgents in the hills. So the helicopters being used for the production of Apocalypse Now are being used currently not just by the production team, but by the Filipino army. And so between takes, in fact, they would have to stop some shoots because the Filipino army would come to them, commandeer the helicopters, and fly them out to real war, actually dropping bombs and killing people, bringing them back so they could shoot films of Apocalypse Now. So there's already this aura of authenticity and reality to it
Yeah.
because there's a real war going on in the background. But on top of that, everyone's high off the rocker. And not just high, I mean, like, they're not here, man. They're in a whole different plane of existence, man. They're in the spirit world, man. They're on like every drug imaginable. Martin Sheen included in that famous scene where he's wigging the fuck out in this hotel room in like not Shanghai, was it Soho? It's the fucking capital of Vietnam. We'll call it Soho. Yeah.
French Revolution is
Fuck.
my 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 corner.
So they're he's in his hotel room and he's wigging the fuck out and he punches a mirror and that's real blood. Almost
Yeah,
like Leo in Django Unchained when he breaks the glass. Like that's a real cut on this hand. So Martin Sheen's really bleeding because he was so drunk, so hopped up on drugs, probably like meth, coke, LSD all rolled up in one, and he punches the glass and they left it in. So a lot of the movie is people just on drugs being filmed.
right.
And so yeah, it feels like a fever dream because I mean it kind of was.
Yeah.
Half the people on set didn't even remember filming the movie.
Some good shit, man.
It's raw, real filmmaking right there.
Yeah. DIY. Fuck it.
They got it done,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was almost at a great cost. I mean, Francis almost killed himself because he was so overwhelmed with the process of making this movie. Uh, and on top of that, you got Lawrence Fishburne, who was his acting debut. At the time, he was too young to even be in the movie.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a kid. I forget how old he was. Like he wasn't old enough to be on set with the things they were doing, but he lied about his age and was able to get on set.
Ooh,
And
there's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
the whole movie's a lawsuit waiting to happen. It's amazing it got made.
Mhm.
It's legendary in the annals of filmmaking for how bad the conditions were.
You got me worried about your filming conditions.
Oh, is it bad that I'm taking direct inspiration from Apocalypse Now in my filmmaking career?
Ugh. You're gonna have people sign a non-disclosure.
I told you that. I was like, you're gonna sign an NDA.
We were
You're
friends, man.
I had to hire an armorer.
Yeah.
I have an official armorer working on the movie because you told me not to use real guns. And in America, you have to have an armorer on set. I mean, that didn't save Alec Baldwin on the set of Rust, but I will make sure that doesn't happen.
No rust today.
No Rusted. Can we play Rust? Have you played Rust?
I have not played Rust.
That's for later. We'll play Rust. All right. So with Apocalypse Now, I think everyone knows the story. The gist is you got Matthew Sheen. Matthew Sheen? Who the fuck is Matthew
Matthew
Sheen?
Lillard, purple guy.
Oh yeah, bro. My favorite part of Apocalypse Now was Matthew Lillard. I mean, I killed it. Oh, Harrison Ford's in it.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Barely. It's crazy.
Hmm.
He's barely a character. We got an all-star cast with this movie,
Yeah.
but the plot and essentially it's the same plot of as the book Heart of Darkness, which spawned another great movie called Heart of Sharkness. Have you seen that one? Heart of Sharkness is phenomenal. It might even be better than Apocalypse Now. But the essential plot is that you have a guy tasked with finding Colonel Kurtz, who has just completely lost his mind. He's out in the jungle and he's creating like his own rogue group out there in the woods. Just he's obsessed with death. It's like a death cult,
Hmm.
and it's like the only way to win a war is like killing everybody. So taking the chains off yourself in war, because the war is just it it's so terrible that it corrodes the very moral fabric of your being. And the only way to truly survive and to keep fighting is to take away morality from the equation. So what Colonel Kurtz does is just take off the moral shackles that have been placed upon him, and he has no restrictions, and he is killing indiscriminately everybody. And so Willard, played by Martin Sheen, not Matthew Lillard, is sent out there to stop him. And it's a very simple
Bag 'em and
plot,
tag
damn straight.
'em.
And it kind of reminds me of movies like Cold Mountain or ultimately it all goes back to the Odyssey.
Mhm.
It has that
As all
quality.
good movies should.
It's a great framework to work from.
Yeah.
It's an awesome template to work from. The journey through atrocity, the journey through the horrors of war, and it's not so much about that destination as you learn to find. Because when you get there, the movie by the end has devolved into such utter insanity, it's barely comprehensible.
Barely.
It's you can make it out, but the movie itself makes you feel like you're losing your mind alongside the characters. Because by the end of it, you are so fucking tired and exhausted and just so overcome by the things you have just witnessed. You feel like the characters. And it's a tiresome movie to get through in the best of ways, but and it's crazy. I've seen it 6 times, and I think the only thing I can compare it to, and this is a weird comparison, but you'll know exactly what I mean. It's like listening to Everywhere at the End of Time.
Oh my god. I think I've listened to it more than anybody really should.
There's no reason to listen to it more than once.
I've listened to it 3 times.
Can we listen to it a fourth? For me, it'll be the third.
Yeah, we could do it for the podcast. Talk about it.
How would we? We'll figure it out when we get. We'll cross that bridge when we burn it.
It's a movie topic or music topic.
Mm-hmm. That'll be fun. Actually, surprisingly, it's a damn good album. But the reason I make this comparison in the first place is it's not fun.
No.
Even with Downfall, I have fun with it because it's just a well-made, good movie, and it scratches the historical itch we have.
Hmm.
Apocalypse Now, yeah, it's based in Vietnam, so I mean, Vietnam happened. It's a real thing. It happened. Everyone knows it. But here is the thing that people don't talk about is losing your fucking mind in war. It's so easy to show people screaming and covered in blood and a real life war. And yeah, we can relate to it on that basis. I think we've all known people who have fought in Vietnam. I mean, my own granddad had an insane ass story
Yeah.
in Nam, and it's like, yeah, it's a real event. All these things really happen, but something you just don't talk about. There's a difference between Vietnam and World War II veterans, if you've ever talked to them. The main difference between these kind of conflicts, and I've talked about this with like a coworker at work who didn't find the topic nearly as interesting as I did. But
Dude.
there's a difference between the way people in World War II talk about their experience, the people who fought in Vietnam.
Yeah.
That being, again, going back to that same idea that World War II was a war worth fighting for. There was good versus evil, and we knew we were the good guys. And it almost makes the sacrifice and the death and the carnage worth it for the end goal. Vietnam was not like that. Now, we agree that the domino theory is correct, and we wanted to stop the spread of the contagion, I mean communism, from spreading. And in that way, I agree. If that's how you want to come at it, yeah. But Vietnam's a proxy war. A proxy war being a war fought between two superpowers who are too powerful to go head to head. And so they have to use a smaller state as a staging ground. So it's pawns in chess.
Hmm.
Chess essentially being used by kings and queens in this big chess game. And you see that with Syria, you see that with Kuwait, you see that with any modern day war since the dropping of the atomic bombs because we can't fight a nuclear war. To quote the movie Threads, you cannot win a nuclear war. And that's why we fight proxy wars because it's so easy to use the indigenous population of a country against themselves. Hey, you guys don't like your conditions? Here's a new idea. Check it out. It's called communism. Wait, no, guys, we got something better. And like snake oil salesmen, the Americans slide in there to replace the French and say, we got a little thing called democracy. Try it out, see if you like it. No refunds.
Yeah, no refunds.
Either there's no refunds. There's no warranty. It's take it or leave it. And if you leave it, well,
Good luck.
yeah, because you're gonna be stuck with one or the other. And there's no winning. There's no winning a war like this because you have a bunch of kids. I swear, every time I think about Vietnam, I'm like, more than any other war, these are just fucking kids. Because even in World War II, during those times, people grew up faster anyways.
Right.
You were an adult by 16. People just grew up quicker. But in the time of Vietnam, it feels different. There's this different aura to it. It's the rock and roll age. You got kids experimenting with drugs and it,
Free love.
free love, man. Different time, different place. And with the veterans of Vietnam, when they talk about Vietnam, it's not like, oh, we were sent to save the world. We weren't supposed to be there. We were just kids. I look at a lot of yearbooks, and it's crazy. If you look at yearbooks from both World War II and Vietnam, those years, there's no men in the yearbooks. They're all gone because they're all fighting war. These are kids who are still taking classes in school.
Hmm.
They're not even old enough to fucking drink and smoke, and here they are with guns in their hand, killing some person in a faraway country they've never met before. It's insane. And that's the point. There's a level of insanity that comes with Vietnam versus World War II. It's good and evil, civilized versus civilized. But now you have these imperial powers with great, vast arrays of weaponry and money at their disposal, throwing it into an underdeveloped country like Vietnam. These people have never seen the like of these kind of weapons or technology before, and all of a sudden it's flooding into them, and both sides are, it's like an angel and the devil on your shoulder telling you, no, we're the good guys. No, we're the good guys. Follow us. And turning these people against each other is fucking horrific on its own. And using these people to fight this bigger, greater war. And then on top of it, you got a bunch of people who don't want to be there.
Right. But to go off of your point about the psychology of war, um, PTSD is a real thing, and I think a good example of it is in Peaky Blinders with Shelby family. Main character in particular was a tunneler in France. Tommy was a tunneler in France, and throughout the entire show, he gets flashbacks, get PTSD triggers, and it gets you can see that it starts to get a little worse and worse, and you can see how he copes with it sometimes, and sometimes it hurt like he has a full blown breakdown, and then he has to pick himself back up again because he's a man. He's got a business and he has to attend to it. And I think it's another example of unchecked psychology.
Especially at
Because
the time.
yeah,
And at the time, it was not known as PTSD, it was shell shock.
yeah, shell shock after World War I.
And PTSD's always existed, but there's this all, even today, there's this level of you're a man. If you show your emotions, you're weak. And other people pick that apart. And it's a constant battle all men have, whether you're in war or not. There's this level of I have to hold it together because people are counting on me, and that's a terrifying idea on its own. But when you break it down to the stakes being my brother's gonna die, the people I went to boot camp with, they've become my brothers. If I don't pick it up, they're gonna die, and you might lose a couple buddies, but you still have to keep going.
Hmm.
You just got to keep going. But for your sake and for your family at home and for the families of your brothers, you
Hmm.
got to keep fighting. And the insanity with Vietnam is that first off, we're not supposed to be there. These people have never wronged you. These aren't Nazis.
No.
These are farmers. These are people who live in thatched huts who grow rice. And they hear about communism and it's like this is going to save us from our poverty. This is going to save us from this pit that we're in, bring us into the civilized world. And they see it like an angel coming to save them. And then we come in there with tanks and fighter jets, being like, actually,
Let
that's
me
what
show you what actual freedom is. As we invade your country.
peace can only be found at the end of a barrel. Marx said that.
Wow.
No, I didn't. But
Markiplier said that.
I mean, Karl Marx. Oh Jesus. Uh, but yeah. So when you look at, isn't Korean
Yes.
another country torn apart by communism?
Ah, just keep the list going, man. I
I've
got
got
all night.
name a war in which the South were the bad guys. I dare you.
We're not talking about gods and generals.
What? No, I was gonna talk about South Sudan. What the fuck are you? Oh, okay. I see where you're going with this.
We're talking about apocalypse now, not the
Damn straight.
neo-Confederate propaganda. Excuse me, it's not.
There's absolutely any of the movies we've chosen. I don't think there's any politic to it. There's like yeah there's politicians at the head of these, but even the Apocalypse Now, very grounded, very what was the average person seeing, and seeing the social decay within the ranks of soldiers and how each individual deals with what they're experiencing. Like Captain Kilgore, that dude couldn't give less of a fuck. He's having the time of his life. You know what he's thinking about? The next groovy wave. That's what he's thinking about.
Yeah,
Him and his surfer boys. I love his character because he is someone so just adjusted to this life. It doesn't bother him. He is so desensitized. And the whole movie is about how do you deal with these horrors that you're experiencing? It's drugs. It's some people can't cope at all, and it's suicide. As you see in another movie, we'll talk about Full Metal Jacket. You see people deal with these horrors in completely different ways. And that's why the end of this road that we get to with Apocalypse Now is Kurtz. Because he is what happens when you completely let go of your moral code and just war. Just war.
hmm
Plain and simple.
is Full Metal Jacket going in a Stanley Kubrick episode or just another a part two to this?
Kubrick.
So then we could talk about my favorite movie.
Hmm. Again,
Yes,
again, we've talked about it in depth. We'll talk about it again,
yes,
and it'll give you an excuse to watch The Shining.
yeah.
A movie that definitely captures the feeling of insanity, and not just so I love chaos in a movie and how people deal with it, but the act of going insane and conveying it to the audience in a way that's watchable.
hmm
The what does someone's mental decay look like? And following Willard, this is a guy that's already unstable because Martin Sheen's on drugs. The actor is unstable, but then you put him through the course of this film, wearing him down, and getting to the point where he is at the end of the movie, where you as the audience feel like, yeah, I'd probably do this too. I would probably just completely fall apart because the only way to survive is to adapt.
hmm
And in wartime, that means you have to kill, and you're going to have to kill people you may not want to, and you can't care about it, and you can't let emotions cloud you because you have a war to fight. And I think the strength of the movie and what a lot of people may miss from it is how do people cope when surrounded by hell?
Like the grandpa from Five People You Meet in Heaven. Spoiler.
That was
It's
that,
a
yeah.
really good. It's a really good scene, and it's perfect for war. Like talking about the concept of trauma and living with the decisions you make in a war that didn't even matter.
You could say about Vietnam was in the end it didn't matter. Again, going with downfall. Did it in the end? It just doesn't matter.
hmm
It just doesn't matter whatsoever. And Apocalypse Now is a movie where at the end, and this is you don't want a movie to do this to you, but it is. It's a movie that makes you feel like did this in the end? Did this whole conflict matter? No, no, it did not. Want to bring it back to World War II?
Yeah, we can do that. Just one more thought is it's a very slow burn that it's definitely a one watch kind of movie. You don't really need to see it
It's just a guy who's listened to everyone at the end of time
again.
3 times. I have seen Apocalypse Now. If we watch it again for any reason, it will be my 6th time watching it. And even after the second time I saw the movie, I'm like, I've already seen it too many times.
Right.
I mean, yeah, the Ride of the Valkyrie seems great. The acting isn't really acting because they're not even acting at that point. Everything that's happening is stuff that's just happening on screen, and they're filming it.
Right.
Um, there's a few deleted scenes, I guess you could talk about. They're in like an extended cut, but you haven't seen the extended cut yet.
No,
So you just saw the theatrical 1979 film. Um,
it's a really good year.
a lot of shit happened. Alien,
Yeah.
came out. Man, they're just right there, man. 70, like when I think of 79, what's the first thing you think of?
Kiss.
Yeah, it's a toss up between Kiss and Alien.
Me too, actually. Now that I'm thinking about
That's
it,
like
yeah.
when I think of 79, I guess third would be Apocalypse Now, but the first two is Kiss and Alien. Damn good year, man.
Yeah, Dynasty and Alien. Like,
Because you got all the stuff from the 70s, but you're right there on the cusp of the 80s. And I gotta be real with you, I think it's all downhill from there. I think humanity and civilization, art and media, and culture peaked in 1979. Tell me I'm wrong. Wait, was Iran Contra in 1979?
Contra.
Not the game, the event it's based off of.
Oh, I don't remember, man. That's Jimmy Carter,
Oh, that's right, because Jimmy was doing shit about the Iran hostage crisis. And then Reagan came in there.
and
Everything
did
got better. Debatable. But the hostages were free.
yes.
Give him some points there.
We don't negotiate with terrorists. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Fair enough.
I got a shirt that says "Fuck Ronald Reagan," but we'll leave it at that.
Would you be leaving it there? That says everything you could possibly. Does a presidential tier list and puts him not an S. How dare you? Are you American?
Sometimes,
That's a good answer. I was born here.
yeah, I was born here. Yeah,
Yeah. So come and see.
I'm sorry. I really liked Come and See. Come and See was. I think I liked it more than Downfall.
Holy shit! Really?
Yeah,
But,
I.
before anything, we should say come and see for people who may not know, because it's not like Downfall or Apocalypse Now, where they're just in the cultural vernacular where everyone knows what these are. Come and See is a 1985 Belarusian picture made by the Soviet Union. Uh, I mean, not made literally by the Soviet Union, right?
Right.
But it was made during the Gorbachev era, and of course a lot of that stuff is going to seep through into the making of the movie. But it's a perspective you don't get to see, just like with Downfall of the Nazis. You get to see this movie from the perspective of the Belarusians, people on the border of mainland Soviet Union, USSR, and then you got the invading German forces coming in. So they're sandwiched in the middle of this conflict. But if you watch the movie and didn't see any of the side car, like motorcycles and the planes and the guns, you would think this movie took place in the 1800s. This place is like all bunch of villages that have probably been untouched that way for hundreds of years.
You know.
And it's a shame that they get stuck in the middle of this conflict, but it's important to see this perspective from their side and to be made by the Soviets.
Right. It's even with the animal death, the actual animal death and torture in the movie. It's a really good movie. Like I love how it's shot. I love the storytelling. I love the audio because after the protagonist gets his first experience with bombs, it fucks with him, and for the rest of the film is how he hears, as you said.
Brilliant POV. Because when the bombs drop, there's this constant droning, ringing sound in the background, which adds to dread. Like just from an ambience point of view, from sound design point of view, it more than any other movie on this list, this is a horror movie. I think first and foremost. Others are war movies that show you the horror of war. This is a horror movie that shows you the effects of war.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a horror movie first, and even it's in its sound design, how it grounds you to this character, which is a kid, by the way. Fliora is this Belarusian boy, and it should be noted that through the making of this film, and they used real machine gun fire. They kill a real cow, and early in the movie, he steps on a bunch of eggs, and I'll get back to that in a second. But this kid ages through the course of the movie because when you're stressed, your hair goes gray and you look older. Have you seen the before and after pictures of like Abraham Lincoln in 1861 and then him in 1865? I'll show you after the podcast, but com- completely different.
Right.
It doesn't look like the same guy, and he didn't have a beard either, so that probably didn't help. But
Ooh,
I know. Can you imagine him without a beard?
Lincoln without the chin strap. I don't know.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, Abraham Lincoln looks without the beard looks like the chick from Jimmy Neutron. You know the teacher with the bird beak nose.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I'll show you and you'll know what I mean. He looks just like her. It's crazy. War will do something to a man. Um,
Yeah.
but seeing this movie, the craziest thing about it is very little like actual effects done to the kid, the actor playing Fliora. It's insane. His hair actually goes white from stress from the filmmaking because there's real bombs, real period piece bombs exploding around them, and their shots are like that bullet barely missed him.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't duck that moment. That guy was getting shredded to pieces. And so through the course of the movie, you feel like this is really happening. It feels like a documentary
Yeah.
because almost all of it's real. Even the death of the cow is real. And not just to kill the cow, to zoom in on its eyeball in its last stages of life. And you can't fake this shit because you can train it like a horse to fall over, but the seizures and the muscle spasms, you can't fake in an animal.
Right.
You can with the guy in Texas Chainsaw when he gets hit over the head with a mallet. That's easy for a guy to fake with the muscle spasms, but you shoot a real cow with a machine gun, you know it.
Yeah.
And I think it's for the effect that the movie's going for, I think it works, but at the same time, they didn't have to shoot that cow.
That's how I feel about the turtle in Cannibal Holocaust.
Won't this be edgy? There's a turtle. Let's eat it right now.
Yeah.
See, that was just mean the way they did it in that movie because they could have just killed it and then ate it, but they decided to eat it while it was still alive, which I guess plays into the whole cannibalism thing. I don't know,
Ugh,
but
that's gonna be a topic.
you want to talk just about exploitation films? You want
Yeah.
to talk just about that?
Exploitation films.
There's a shit ton of them. There's a shit ton of them. They're rip-offs of Cannibal Holocaust
Yeah, like Green Inferno.
by Eli Roth. Yeah, which is good. The
I
scene with
still
the
haven't seen it.
the scene with the bullet ants gets me, but if you haven't seen it, I won't press any further. Uh,
It always comes in my recommendations.
it's good. Another war movie that Eli Roth was in Inglorious Bastards by Tarantino, and that's gonna be on the Tarantino list after Kubrick. That'll be fun. But that one's too upbeat, too fun. Glorious Bastards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the few roles I've seen Eli Roth actually act in. He did host Shark Week that one time. Shark After Dark, if I remember correctly.
That's still going on.
Yeah. Shark After Dark or Shark Week in general?
Shark Week.
Yeah, Shack Attack did it just last year.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy shit, man. And Practical Pranksters had an episode too, like a year or two ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man.
The absence of cable has an effect on a man.
That's why you got the internet. It's called YouTube. I don't even need streaming services.
Everything's on YouTube.
Why watch something when I can watch a 7 hour review of it on YouTube? You know what I mean? Like, I could get an entire retrospective on something and never need to watch that thing, and I'll know more about that thing than the person who watched it. YouTube's great. No, it's not great.
And Nazis.
The Belarus. I mean, they're great. Not,
Who?
not, huh?
Who? Let's clarify what you mean by who. the Belarus, right, Chandler?
The
Like the
Belarus.
Star Wars meme.
That's all I see now. Belarus is great, except recently, because the current president of Belarus is not in support of the Ukrainians, and that's just come on. But as of 1943 Belarus, I'm on their side. Those guys are okay.
Yeah.
I support them.
The boys are back in town.
The Germans were in town.
Yeah.
Real quick. I've seen the movie 3 times now, and there's a bit of symbolism I missed both times. Because the movie, just like Apocalypse Now, is a fever dream of and you feel like you're going crazy while watching it. And it doesn't help that when his ears are ringing, your ears are ringing. So you feel like you're in this guy's position, experiencing things as he's experiencing them. Um, but the scene where he's like near the beginning, he steps on a bunch of bird eggs. And I think they're like real dead birds that he stepped on too, making it even worse. And he cries about it. And later on, when he's with this girl, Glacia, they're in the woods after the bombing. They got separated from this pretty much volunteer brigade. He's laying out there in the woods with her while it's raining, and I interpret it this way because the movie doesn't throw you a bone. You just have to make a lot of int-
Assumptions.
assumptions and interpretations yourself with the movie showing you, which is the beauty of a visual medium for the movie to just show you and not tell you something. And this bird walks into view, and you immediately, well, at least I didn't immediately, but now rewatching it, I immediately make the connection. This bird. Those were the eggs. Like it was the mother bird
Right.
of these eggs that he stepped on, and we're rooting for this kid because he's part of a faction that we can relate to and sympathize with. And even then, he still caused carnage. He still ended lives that were unnecessary. Those bird eggs didn't have to get destroyed, but him simply passing through ended life. Almost like how war just passes through and inevitably just ends life. Whether it's meaning to or not, there's casualties that just happen. And later on, after you see all the bodies of his family piled up in an awesome scene. And I say awesome in the actual
Powerful.
usage of the word. It's a powerful scene where you see all these dead, naked bodies piled up that he doesn't see, but that Glasha sees. And when he looks into the well right before this happens, the bird is there, the same mother bird from before. And when he looks into the well, he sees his reflection staring back at him, but there's a ripple in the water. And rewatching that, I interpret that with the bird there as well. There's a rippling consequence to his actions. So in the beginning of the movie, when him and this other kid are being scolded by this older man to not dig for weapons because Fliora wants to join this volunteer group of Belarusian soldiers who are just pretty much hold out in the woods. They don't have like any tanks or anything. It's just a bunch of guys in the woods with guns. Uh, and he picks up a gun, and his mother's like, "You might as well kill us all because you just
It
sentenced
was
us
a
to death."
hammer. A hammer.
That was an axe.
It was an axe.
Yeah, just you might as well kill us all because what's the point? Because if you go and fight in this war, we're all going to die. And it, it's a message I'm still trying to grapple with because they had no choice. But by simply fighting the invaders in their land, they're also risking the lives of their families.
Yeah.
And it shows you that sometimes you have to fight no matter what those consequences are. And there's going to be casualties to those consequences that you're making. People are going to die, innocent people. But at
A
what
lot of
point,
innocent people died.
almost all the innocent people
Was
died.
628.
Villages were burned in
Yeah.
Belarus during World War II. And it's just Belarus, or Belarusia, as they'd call it at the time. It was a Soviet satellite. Um, but yeah, I think as far as the message and the themings are concerned, I'm satisfied with my point. What would you like to add?
It's dark. It's graphic. It's just sad. It's a sad movie, but I don't think it's as hard to watch as Apocalypse Now because the scenes are concise, consistent, at least from my point of view.
The shots didn't linger on people's faces,
Hmm.
just showing you the emotion they're feeling in the moment. It's so raw, and I love that they're looking into the camera. And it's not like a fourth wall break because they'll show you what they're really looking at or what they're engaging with. But they'll look directly at the viewer and they'll stay on the shot with the pain in their eyes. The absolute horror is stained into their eyes. and you as a viewer have to confront it.
Like the last shot with the car shot.
Oh, after she's been raped multiple times, and that scene, the final act, the third act of this movie, is so ingrained in my memory. The first time I saw it, because the movie is slow, it's a slow burn, and there's definitely points of interest along the way. But when you get to the final act, it just stays. It never leaves you. For me, at least, as someone who has watched a lot of war movies, this is one of the most accurate, realistic depictions of what atrocity really looks like. Because even in Apocalypse Now, when you get to Kurtz's hideout, you have decapitated heads everywhere. It looks like a haunted house attraction. There's just body parts everywhere, and it's almost silly in its presentation. And because that's
Almost.
almost because that's the point is that it's so over the top and so insane. You're immediately confronted with the madness of it all.
Yeah.
With this, it's a slow build up to the insanity, and then when you finally get to it, it just doesn't let go. And putting all these people who may think that they're just signing papers, or some of them might be deported, they're all herded like cattle into a church. And I think you made this joke, but in typical black metal fashion,
What is this, Norway?
well, this is Norway. They burned the church down.
Yeah, it is fucked, man. To say the least.
Wow, it's a powerful scene, but
Yeah,
the most profound thing I think I've ever seen in a war movie. This isn't my favorite war movie. I
Downfall is.
Downfall is most likely my favorite, will remain that way. But the most profound thing I've ever seen in a war movie is the ending of this film. So he catches back up with the volunteer brigade, and they wipe out all the Nazis, the German soldiers who committed this SS, who committed this atrocity that you just witnessed in this village. Which, by the way, the group that shows up at the end of the movie, the SS brigade that shows up, is a real one, comprised mostly of ex-convicts and criminals, rapists, murderers, who they let out of prison to go fight in the war, and their sole objective was to cause as much mayhem and massacre as possible. That was literally what they were designed to do.
Yeah,
And you get a bunch of meth addicts hopped up. They just got released from prison and are told you have free reign to kill and rape anybody you want.
it's disgusting.
It's terrifying
Yeah,
to give them free reign to do that. But at the very end of the movie, they get their comeuppance, and like rabid dogs, they fight amongst themselves in their final moments, and they're gunned down and killed. And then Glasha shows back up with a whistle, and she is just—I've never seen such a face of complete defeat on a person. It doesn't look fake. It doesn't look like makeup. It looks like a person who was gang raped brutally and has just completely broken.
yeah,
And Fleora's too broken to help her. Everyone's broken. How do you lift someone back up when you're in the same pit that they're in?
right.
And when he gets to this puddle and it has this portrait of Hitler in it, he begins shooting it, and it shows these real wartime videos in reverse, showing you Hitler right before he kills himself, like a few days before, where he's with the kids. And they show this exact same scene in Downfall,
Yeah,
where he's given
it was
these.
the last footage.
And he's given Hitler all these medals, or Hitler's given all these kids of the German youth group all these medals, and it's going back in time from there. And you see him rising to power in reverse, and then it goes back to World War I, and just keeps going further back. And every time he keeps shooting this bolt action rifle into this portrait of Hitler, until you get to the final shot, and it's an image of Hitler as a baby, and he doesn't pull the trigger. And the reason I think this is profound, not because, oh, if you saw baby Hitler, would you kill him to stop the Holocaust? No. In that moment, it's not Hitler. It's not this dictator yet. It's not a tyrant. It's just a baby.
Yeah,
And it's a moment of humanity that after all the shit this kid has been through, all the horrors he's endured, his entire family's dead. He's lost everything, but in this moment, there's still this glimmer of humanity of, if I killed this baby, would I be any better than the people who are killing our babies?
yeah. It's powerful. I really liked that ending shot there. And the whole time they're like just telling him to come on, we gotta keep moving on the bridge. So
Hmm.
like the very last part of the group says, "Come on, we have to go."
I think it's profound. I think it's powerful, and we've been very tongue in cheek this whole time, making little jokes here and there because you kind of have to. You have to have a gallows sense of humor, a dark humor about these topics when you talk about them because it's so easy to fall into this macabre way of thinking of just despair and hopelessness. And I think these are a great group of movies to show people like the horrors of war. There might be better representations, more realistic in some senses, but as far as come and see Apocalypse Now and Downfall are concerned, I feel like these are very real, very grounded uh, depictions of war and what it does to psyche, what it does to the human heart, and it's very powerful stuff. And though the only American one we've talked about is Apocalypse Now, Memorial Day is an American holiday, but I think it's good to recognize all people who've died in war, and that sometimes not all of it's worth fighting for. These petty little squabbles,
Yeah.
these stupid ideological inconsistencies. It's all stupid. Everything's made up. Everything's stupid. We're all people at the end of the day, but we'll still find ways to divide ourselves and put up these silly barriers, label ourselves something, and it's us and them mentality.
Yeah.
It's all stupid, but there are things worth fighting for. And it doesn't devalue whatsoever the people who give their lives in pursuit of these greater ideals. And there are things worth fighting for, and there's things worth dying for. And to see people give everything in pursuit of that, so I can sit here today and talk about these stupid fucking movies with you, it's been a privilege.
Yes. Fucking love America.
I love America. Do I always love the government? No, but that's the most American thing you
That's the
could do.
most American thing you could do, man. Hate your government.
Hell yeah. It's what other country can you I
Hate your government.
I saw a guy drive around the other day with so on his tailgate he had like this big ass bumper sticker or decal. I think decal is a better word for it of Joe Biden tied up with ropes and his mouth duct tape, laying in the back of the tailgate in the bed of the truck.
That's funny.
It's funny, but it makes you wonder: Would this guy?
Do that?
Yeah, is he the kind of guy to do it? Is this a terroristic threat? Are you threatening the president of your country? And you know what? He has every right to do it.
Yeah.
I love this country, and I love the people who fought and died for it. And that's we could have done in that episode anything else, but it's Memorial Day, and I scheduled it wrong because I made a timeline of movies I wanted to do and talk about, and I accidentally miscalculated. So that's why yeah, he played Skyrim last week. That was a big reason, but thank God he did because it'd been weird having a memorial episode last week. So it was perfect timing. I'm glad we got to talk about it. God bless America. God bless our troops. Bring them home. Fight the wars that matter. Oil isn't important. Go back before the Industrial Revolution. Ted Krasinski was right. Any closing arguments?
Um, we'll definitely do more parts for war movies. There are some that I'd like to do. Um, but for the meantime, I think it's right to just do a couple, have a sit down and talk about them. I don't think that a good. I mean, like we make a really long content, but like having a 7 hour episode talking about all the films, because some of them you had were like 3 hours long.
Even the ones we talk about now weren't full episodes. It is kind of what this first season of the show is going to be. Is very broad, very basic, large scope stuff, and then we're going to narrow it down and filter in more concentrated ideas. Because all the stuff we're talking about, we can talk about for 10 hours. Apocalypse Now alone, we can do a dissection of for hours.
Mhm.
But we're simply introducing ideas. letting the audience get a feel for how we feel about certain things, and if they like it, uh, they can check us out on more long form content, which we will be putting out. Um, but as far as war movies go, there's so many we could have chosen. Because I only chose seven, but I didn't put 1917 on there. I did have Hacksaw Ridge and Fury, again World War II movies, but I also put Gods in General. I could have. I mean, there's so many war movies, but I wanted to choose the ones that don't get talked about as often as they probably should. Like with in the case of Come and See, uh, there's definitely a few others I wanted to put on there, but I think this is a good introduction to the ideas. We'll definitely be revisiting the concept of war because for a horror podcast, I think war is a pretty horrible topic to discuss.
Yeah. I don't see us as a horror podcast, honestly.
Not really, but it's kind of again with labels. You label yourself something, but that's not all we are.
Yeah, and we're a comedy podcast talking about war.
I don't know. I think there's some pretty funny bits in
There's
this.
some good bits, but in all seriousness, it's yeah,
It's terrible.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
It,
it's gallows humor. We're just trying to make light of it, but he-
you kind
uh,
of have to with dark topics. The only way to really cope is to try to make light of it because we understand the heaviness of it, and we have the respect for all the different topics and people and all the different wars. But bad history, if we don't talk about them, they're destined to be repeated.
amen.
And what better way to talk about it in a lighthearted kind of way to kind of ease the pain of it?
We're digestible too. If you want to be depressed, watch the movies. We're just reviewing them. Why does the
Right?
review have to be depressing?
Yeah.
You know,
And
that's how I feel about it.
yeah, this yeah, yeah, a good time. Had a good time talking about the movies. Yeah, I think we could have fit one more, but with time restraints, I think this is a very a good spoonful for the audience.
Speaking of time constraints, my friend, you ready to end it off here?
It's been a pleasure.
Dun 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 dun.
Bye
Goodbye.
bye.
Also, final note here, folks. The city I was trying to think of was Saigon. Thank you for your time.